So our speaker is Himanshu Agarwal. He's the SVP of Solutions for Workboard. But prior to that, and that's great, but prior to that, I think it's important to understand the perspective he's coming from. He is a prior partner at McKinsey. We all know McKinsey, fantastic think tank of geniuses doing great consulting work, where he has spent more than a decade working with clients around the world on complex strategic issues. He's also been an advisor for software as a service companies in new product introduction, growth, business building. Makes sense for what he's about to talk about? Before joining McKinsey, he was at Intel, where he helped launch new technologies. And on top of that, Himanshu brings 3 different degrees from some of the best institutions in the world, including Wharton, Georgia Tech, and the Indian Institute of Technology. Without further ado, Himanshu, if you can join us, I will turn the stage and the screen over to you for a fantastic presentation on dealing with zero waste strategy execution and optimizing for the scarcity of everything. Good luck.
Thank you, Chris. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. Let me see if the technology works here. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
We can.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for having me here. I'm delighted to be here. I am, as Chris said, I am an SVP at Workboard Inc. By way of introduction to Workboard, we have an opportunity to work with some of the world's fastest growing companies and some of the world's biggest companies across multiple industries, be it financial services, technology, life sciences, automotive, manufacturing, and engineering. These companies are looking for ways to accelerate the rhythm of their business and execute strategy faster in the face of ongoing headwinds. Today, we are faced with scarcity of everything. Talent is scarce. It is hard to recruit. It is hard to retain. Time is precious. Natural resources are scarce. Sustainability programs are everywhere, as they should be. They are at the top of the house. They are at the board. Capital is scarce. Interest rates are rising. Higher inflation. Stock markets are going down. Supplies and supply chain are unpredictable, and attention is scarce as well. Now combine that scarcity with new speed. Technology and business cycles are accelerating. They are not only coming faster and faster, but also coming to us with bigger degrees of change with every cycle. Teams are distributed, distracted, and after prolonged isolation, they are disconnected. We are operating in the face of 40-year high inflation, 8.5%. It's the confluence of these business dynamics that are converging pressure points that requires us to operate differently than what we have in the past. These 3 forces requires us to optimize, accelerate, and engage and retain our talented people. What I mean by optimization is using the available capacity and resources to its fullest potential for the highest impact. Acceleration means iterating, innovating at much higher speed to match the speed of the market. And retaining means engaging people in purpose, unlocking their innovation agenda, having them team up for a purpose rather than just for hierarchy. Leaders with bold strategy and high urgency are, and when I say leaders with bold strategy and high urgency, are the leaders who are changing the business model of their companies. They are moving to a more intelligent, intentional, digital operating rhythm for zero waste strategy execution. There are 4 hallmarks of zero waste strategy execution: intentional, iterative, inclusive, intelligent. Let's walk through each of these. Intentional. Zero waste strategy execution is incredibly intentional about how you align your strategy and how you drive strategy execution. The long range strategy and the short range quarterly objectives are the mechanisms through which you align on strategy. How you drive strategy and execution includes monthly business and ops reviews, weekly status meetings and one-on-ones, and then the data through which you come up with analytics and dashboard. This in totality is the operating rhythm. It is the cadence of alignment and the cadence of accountability for what we aligned on is what we call the operating rhythm. The first aspect of intentional is the faster operating rhythm and cadence. Instead of having a 2 to 5 year long range plan, 1 year objectives or the annual objectives, quarterly business reviews, in zero waste strategy execution, you have the annual plan, you have the quarterly objectives, you have the monthly business reviews, and you have the weekly one-on-ones and status updates. It is a much faster operating rhythm and cadence. The second aspect of the intentional hallmark is the modern rituals, not the old rituals, not the antiquated rituals, modern rituals like OKR, objective and key results, that are set on a quarterly basis. With OKRs, you define and align on outcomes, not on activities, outcomes. That is a major shift for many organizations, or for most of the organizations. Historically, organizations have focused on tracking and rewarding activities without having clarity on how those activities are adding up to outcomes or the company results. Modern rituals enable everyone to align on and measure results that the work should create each quarter. It's a major shift for most of the organizations. The third aspect is broad alignment to unlock capacity. So rather than aligning just at the top of the house, just within the senior leadership team, and having rest of the organizations to guess what we need to work on, zero waste strategy execution focus on providing clarity to the whole organization. It is about the broad alignment across the organization, where every team in the organization is aligned on OKRs, is aligned on outcomes in the quarter. All the capacity of all teams is aligned and focused. I bet all of you did an employee survey in last 6 months to a year. If you did that survey and asked how many people within your organization know the strategy or know how to contribute towards it, chances are that 60% of your organization knew the strategy. The other 40% does not know how to contribute, or what the company strategy is, or how to contribute towards the company strategy. Being intentional about creating that clarity helps organization create that broad alignment and unlock the full capacity of the organization. The next hallmark is iterative, or being more iterative. In zero waste strategy execution, you iterate and align on your short-term objectives and key results quarterly. Each quarter, you capture external changes, internal changes, and the learnings. And you use those quarterly learnings and then the changes that you have learned in setting the targets for the next quarter. And this enables you to test the long-range assumptions more often. As we talked about, business and technology cycles are accelerating. See, the So then the assumptions that are used to develop the long range strategy, they are being proven or disproven at a much faster rate than we are used to. Like I'm sure last year, if you worked on developing your long range strategy, you didn't consider 8.5% inflation. You probably didn't even consider the growth is going to be less than 5%. So in an iterative cycle, you capture the learnings every quarter. You use that to set your targets for subsequent quarters, and you use the results to inform the assumptions that are used for long range strategy. And you can, once you are testing those assumptions on a quarterly basis, you can adjust and refine your long range strategy as those assumptions change at a much faster rate. Teams iterate and realign frequently. It is the frequency that ensures the capacity of the team is not diluted. How do we make sure when the market changes, when there is new data point, teams are not executing on these stale plans? How do we make sure the team's energy is fully dialed in what is required in the given quarter, what is required to achieve the outcome that you want to achieve? And when teams iterate on their own, they capture the learnings on their own, and then they use that information to adjust quickly rather than waiting for weeks to get that data, and hence the capacity is not diluted. We iterate at a much faster cadence. It's the 4 times faster. Rather than iterating on an annual basis, you are iterating on a quarterly basis. And you are driving much deeper and broader alignment. For that, you need a system. Otherwise, you don't have the agility and the efficiency to be able to do that well. The system also ensures that you are getting the data, you are capturing the learnings that you are using to adjust your targets every quarter, as well as you are helping inform your long-range plans. The next hallmark is to be more inclusive. So rather than concentrating on the leadership teams at the top of the house, zero-based strategy execution teams ensures that teams across the whole organization are included. After all, teams are how you execute on your strategy. Their attention, their time, their talent is essential to achieve your strategy. Teams are the engine of value creation. You want to make sure you are tapping in their brain power and their willpower to execute on your strategy. OKR is a technique through which you invite them to be part of the process. It ensures there is a shared authorship, there is a shared ownership, and teams are working toward, they are motivated, they are engaged, and they are working towards achieving the strategy. Now, in a classical cascade fashion, managers dictate the targets and they order those targets to their teams, and teams are expected to go and execute those orders without understanding the why of it. And when the teams are not included in the why of the work, they are not included in authoring those targets, authoring those outcomes, then you don't get the full benefit of their brain power. You don't get the full benefit of their time. You don't get the full benefit of their energy. That is where the zero-based strategy execution focus on, which is invite them to be part of the process. Next element of inclusive hallmark is to enable strategic thinking deep in the organization. As teams define and align on OKRs, they get local clarity while within the range of the global direction. They are more empowered, they are more enabled, and they can make smart, outcome-driven decisions in the moment on their own. when they get new data, when they get new facts, when they learn something, they don't have to wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks to go review it through the chain of command and then get their answer and execute. They can make that decision. They can act on it on their own because they have been empowered, they have been enabled. And that ensures that your capacity is not being lost. If your teams takes 2, 3, 4 weeks in a quarter to get facts, get decision, that capacity is getting lost. And while every single day matters. When the talent is scarce, when you can't hire and retain, the week's worth of capacity is a lot. It could be a win or lose situation. The third aspect is the operating model. What I mean by that is you need to be efficient and fulfilling for everyone. Many organizations have a very burdensome management reporting system, which is in service of reporting to senior leaders. It is mostly a task. It is a drag on teams. Versus in the inclusive approach, the focus is to reduce the task. The focus is to reduce the burden of reporting to management. It is shifting to enabling, inspiring, and engaging people in the genuine achievement of strategy. In the zero-based strategy execution, no time is wasted on reporting on the management. Time is made available to focus on what moves the needle for every team across the organization. Final hallmark is more intelligent. Zero-based strategy execution is digital, it's automated, and full stack. By digital, what I mean is the strategy, the measures of success, results, progress towards results, narrative around results, risk, barriers, opportunities. That is all important data for your business that is being captured as part of this system. In many organizations, you have a single source of truth, or you have a system to tell you how many help tickets were there last quarter or this month. You have a system to tell you how many resources did we have last month, or what's the sales pipeline, how are we doing against our supply chain. But you do not have any system for the process of strategy execution. You are not capturing any data as you are executing on your strategy. So all the learnings are being lost. So this is the most important data to run your business, and you do not have a system. So when the strategy, objectives, chaos, risk, barriers, breakthroughs, all that data is captured and used, you can use them to make smart decisions in the moment. It is at your fingertips. You use even smarter decisions when you set the objectives for the next quarter and the next year. And you use those learnings to help inform the assumptions and refresh your long-range strategy. Second aspect is it is more automated. By automation, what I mean is the whole operating rhythm is automated. It starts with the long-range strategy, which goes into the quarterly objectives, which goes into the monthly business reviews, which goes into the weekly one-on-ones and status meetings, and then the analytics. Business reviews, weekly reporting systems, weekly reporting and status meetings, all of that are automated. You do not need to spend the time 2 weeks putting together 80 slides, spending 50 hours to put together a slide deck for a business review. Now everything is automated. You reduce the operational tax. And when you reduce that burden of asking people to use their precious time, precious talent, and attention to document those results, to put together the document for various meetings, you free up all of their capacity, you free up their precious time, you free up their precious talent and the brain power to work on what matters, which is executing towards your strategy. And finally, it is full stack. It is how you align on your strategy, which is the long range strategy and the short range quarterly objectives. It is how you drive, which is the monthly business reviews and the weekly one-on-ones and status updates, and then how you leverage the analytics to make better decisions. Now, when organizations that have shifted to zero-based strategy execution, and when they are using a digital operating rhythm to drive their strategy, they experience both the quick wins and a transformational change. And let me give you two examples here. The first one is Juniper. We started engaging with Juniper 2 years ago when their revenue had stalled. They were not growing. Stock price was falling. And they had done the employee survey, which told them that only 58% of the employees could articulate the strategy or knew what the strategy was. What it means that more than 1/3 of their capacity or more than 1/3 of those resources did not know how to contribute towards the strategy. So they were not able to get 1/3 of the organization capacity in achieving their strategy. We partnered with them. Within 2 quarters, they did the employee survey again. Within 2 quarters of adopting the digital operating rhythm, they did the survey again. They got 18% improvement in employees' understanding of the strategy and their confidence in achieving their confidence in company's ability to achieve that strategy. Within 6 months, they got 18% more capacity at zero cost, and they got the resources who already know what the company does, who are fully ramped up, and those are skills resources. Fast forward, this year, they grew double-digit. They were in the magic quadrant on the 5 products that they operate in. And recent survey told them that 98% of their employees know the strategy and know how to contribute towards the strategy, which is 40% more than where they were 2 years ago. 40% more than probably what their 40% more capacity probably compared to their peers. So they nearly doubled their capacity in 2 years by adopting a digital operating rhythm, by giving clarity to the whole organization, by engaging the resources in the strategy alignment and the execution. They are not wasting any time, they are not wasting any resources, they are not wasting any capital, and growing double-digit. The second example is GHX. 2 years ago, they had multiple products, some new products, some old products, some growing faster, some growing slower, complex portfolio. And they had a complex, lengthy business review process, monthly business review process, where 50 people would come together, spend 4 hours in the monthly business review, talk through 80 slides, and at the end of that, CFO would still say, no idea how the business is doing. So all the prep, like 2 weeks of prep that went into preparing for it, 50 people's time in the monthly business review, 4 hours, all of that going to waste when the meeting is not achieving its desired objective. They partnered with us with Workboard. Within 2 quarters, they started having their monthly business review through the automated business review, or what we call it, running business review. It was a 1 hour business review with only 20 people attending, and these 20 people are the people who had to contribute towards the decision making. Other 30 did not need to come to get status updates because they could go and log into the system and then find where we are against the result themselves. And 0 sweats, everything is automated. In the process, the CFO did the calculation. They said they were saving $50,000 per month per meeting. That's the additional capacity, which they of course repurpose towards the strategy execution. This year, they are growing 10% revenue acceleration on their base. So again, taking a step back, companies who have adopted a digital operating rhythm and are executing on zero-based strategy execution well, within 6 months, they get more capacity. They get increased capacity. Their cost is lower. They are using their resources more efficiently. And they are more automated. In terms of the transformation, they accelerate their strategy execution. They accelerate the execution of their strategy while learning along the way, because it's an iterative cycle. Before I hand it back to Christopher for questions, just in few ways you can learn more. I talked about the 2 examples, GHX and Juniper. We have many more customer journeys like that, be it Cisco, Microsoft, Humana, Capital One, and so on. So you can go to workboard.com/customers to learn more about other customers' journey. Second is you can arrange a strategy execution discussion and a demo to learn how a digital operating rhythm works in practice, how it shows up in the system, and how we operationalize the zero-based strategy execution. And then third, you can engage in an assessment to quantify where are the friction points in your operating rhythm. Where is the latency in your operating rhythm? And what opportunity exists to accelerate it for you? Thank you. Christopher, back to you.
I am back to join you on screen. I think I better get a little light in my world, or I'm going to look like I'm fading away here. I'm happy to join you. Okay, this is a problem. The problem that you guys address is a problem that I have faced personally. So it always makes these conversations so much, for me, if I've experienced the problem, it makes it easier for me to understand, what's going to go on. I worked in General Electric for many years, and General Electric had, and probably to this day has, the strategic reviews you're talking about, with many, many people showing up to these strategic reviews, and they had numbers to them. They had session 1, session 2, whatever, all these different breakdowns of the sessions. And there was a huge amount of resource dedicated to preparing these PowerPoint presentations, whether they were shown electronically or in paper, hopefully electronically, save a few trees. And so that was the operating rhythm of the company for years. And by the way, GE was pretty successful doing it, but it was a huge waste of time, a huge waste of time. So here's my question to you is, in order to do that, there was a whole culture, and I think there's a culture in any big company in the world that does this, whether it's SAP or Siemens or Nokia or whatever, all these big clients. It sounds like you've worked with a lot of those, and I've worked with several of them. They all have a culture behind it. And that culture is, this is the way we get our priorities aired. This is how we get resources for what we're trying to do, that kind of thing. So when you're presenting that to a client, how do you tell them to take the first steps toward dissolving that old way of doing things? How do you address that? Because sometimes, even if you present a better picture, they're so used to the crappy picture, they want to stay with the one they know. How do you help them make that next step?
So I think few things. One is the first step is the acknowledgement and the recognition that world has changed. The rate at which business and technology cycles are changing has accelerated. And we can't think of having a 2-year plan, live by annual objectives. Every quarter we have to iterate. But if you look at your operating rhythm, if you look at the tool, if you look at the cadence, they are all serving your business asset you are operating 10 years ago. Those are old, you have the old operating rhythm, you have the old rituals, while the new, the speed is different. So I think most, we have many big companies as we talked about, like Walmart, Intel, Humana, they are all adopting this. So I would say the first step is the acknowledgement that we need to change. We need to be different. We need to modernize our operating rhythm. We need to move from being analog to digital.
And when you say the acknowledgement, I just want to dig a little down. I'm sorry I'm doing this to you, but this is interesting. So I'm asking you hard questions. So that the first question, we need to acknowledge a difference. I could see that in two kind of categories. One, the market is moving faster than our systems are allowing us to move. And two, my God, are we wasting a lot of time in these stupid meetings, right? Are those kind of, as I listened to your presentation, those seem to be two pretty big messages, right? To get them to recognize 60 people in a room for 8 hours and the CFO still has no idea what the heck's going on in the company, that's a problem, right? And then do you use some, when you go, like Walmart's a great example, fast moving, they got to deal with retail challenges all over the place. Do you try to show them, hey, look, if it takes you 6 months to make an adjustment to your plan and the market moved in 3 months, you're done, right? You miss the movement.
Yeah, and I think our discussion with most of the organizations isn't about whether we should do it or not. It is more about how do we get started?
Exactly.
How big of a change we are talking about?
Thank you. How do you get started?
Right? How do you get started? How big of a change we are talking about? How fast can we make this change? And so that's where the discussion is, rather than, okay, do we really have to change? Right? I think that ship has sailed and everybody recognizes it. And to be honest, companies who haven't started on this journey, they are already late.
Yeah.
Right? They are already late. And I think when we think about how do you get started, I go back to the two examples that we talked about. You just have to get started. It's going to be a bit messy in the beginning. It is hard to move from activities to outcomes. But the good news is, within 3 months, within 6 months, you see the benefit. When you give clarity to the whole organization from the top that this is what the company is trying to achieve, and you invite all of your teams to be part of that sausage making on how the strategy will be achieved, right away you motivate them, right away you get more capacity. So within 3 to 6 months, you get more capacity, and then B, you start with few business groups or few monthly business reviews, and you show it's a much lower cost. And once in a big organizations like Walmart, Intel, one group does it, it becomes the model house, it becomes the blueprint, they see it and they want to just go faster and faster and faster. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to sit and then update number on a PowerPoint slide and then 2 weeks later it's actually different. It is not fun.
Let me argue with you here. And the reason is I'm going to point to this book, right, which I wrote. And it's all about the intelligent automation space, right? You're implementing a technology that is going to make the process of running the operating rhythm of the business better, faster, simpler, right? There are people involved in making those slides who don't know what they're going to do if that's not what they do, right? When you take away that job, if you don't tell them what's going to happen different, the CEO is sold, the CFO, the CEO, they get what you're talking about, right? So, but that first breaking that first layer of ice to say, you know, those 50 people all over the company who are making all these slides, or 20 people or whatever it is, those people probably don't like that job. But how do you, because I think I know what you're going to say, what I think you should say, because there's a lot better work for them to do. But what do you say to the person who says, well, if I don't make these slides, what am I going to do all day?
And I think we should break this question into 3 parts, right? One is, so it's not just, first of all, I would say it's not just the dedicated set of folks who are doing the slides. You actually have a lot of your leaders' time, a lot of your working team's time that go in making and updating and putting the context in that slide. So sure. You free up all of that time, which should be going towards executing on the outcomes. That's one. The second is folks who do, like, you know, if you went and did the survey with the folks who are just working on the slides, majority of them would say they hate this. They don't want to do this. They would rather do the deep analytics work. They would rather want to understand, okay, what are we learning from there? And then how do we go and work on the business based on those learnings versus working within the business. So they want to shift towards more analytics, more towards the trends, more towards how it is, what are we learning and as a result, what do we need to do differently? They themselves want to go shift towards that. So I think and then third is, if you combine it with the talent is scarce, it's hard to retain and hard to recruit.
Right.
Like, wouldn't you want to have some capacity that you can repurpose?
Well, your timing, your timing couldn't be more perfect right now. If it were, 3 years ago and the labor market wasn't like it is today, it's harder. And I'm trying to lead you, but only if you agree with me. I don't want you to say something you don't agree with. That some of the people who build those strategy decks and are working directly with the heads of the departments and the divisions and everything, I'm not talking about administrative people typing up slides. I mean, the people actually going out seeking the data. That's how they find value in life. They get access to these really senior people in the company, and they pull together the information and they put it in a presentation form. And then when it needs to get redone, they go do it again. And my view is, listening to what you're saying, if those people see that they get a better job as a result of implementing this, they get to do more interesting stuff instead of the running around part, but they still get to be part of the strategy execution, because a lot of people are really excited by that. A lot of people who go to McKinsey are very excited by strategy, right? And so they don't want to be out of the loop, right? And I think that's what you're doing. You're helping these people, these very smart people, who they're still going to be in that loop, helping make really important decisions, but they're just going to spend a lot less time in the rework and the cycles and the craziness.
That's right. Creating the strategy is not being automated. You still have to think about the puts and takes. You still have to think about 5 different roads we could go in, have a trade-off discussion. You still have to facilitate all of that. That is not getting automated, right?
And that's the part they love. Yeah, that's good.
That's the part that they love, right? Coming up with which part of the strategy I need to execute in this quarter versus next quarter, that is not being automated. That still needs to be done. What is being automated is, how are we doing compared to, like, at the beginning of the quarter, that the objective that we set, where are we on? You don't want to go and talk to 20 people pull data from 5 systems just to understand where we are. That is, you are getting that information at your fingertips so that you can make a better decision, even as the strategy operations person.
You know, I found when people would put these slides together and these presentations and charts and Excel, you know, templates and everything, they would spend so much time getting those things, getting the data into them, and then they were almost exhausted. And the next step is what you needed them to have their brains and their energy dedicated to, which is, so what does all this stuff mean, right? What do we do with that? But they were so exhausted, 80% of their energy and their focus and their life force was dedicated into creating this thing, which then was wrong. It was out of date 2 months later, right? And then you'd say, well, wait a minute, you've got all this incredible brain power. Why can't you give me some analysis? And the person would be like, I'm exhausted. What else do you know, I spent too much time doing this. So if I understand what you're saying, you know, it's what I call helping humans be heroes, right? You're letting the robots or the tool just do all that grunt work that it's important grunt work, but it's exhausting to really smart people to do all that stuff and then keep it updated. And then they can sit there with a nice hot cup of coffee and say, are you seeing the same epiphany I'm seeing? We can do some great things here with the company if we make this adjustment and that adjustment, right? So yeah. I'm going to join your sales team and help you sell. I'm just kidding. Help you sell your tool.
You are welcome to. I think that's
just kidding. I try to look at this every time I'm on these calls. I want to be not the chairman of the call, and Jose is another person who does these calls, and he's fantastic. But I want to be a member of the audience, right? Someone who's listening to you, and I'm in the strategy team at Walmart, or I'm at the strategy team at Credit Suisse, or Bed Bath & Beyond, or whatever. Pick a company. Pepsi. I spent a lot of time in Pepsi. Anyway, fantastic. Okay, let me see if I get any other questions that I need to go through. We got a couple of minutes. Well, let me ask you this. We got a couple of minutes. So if you were to say sort of what's the big takeaway? What's your big takeaway that you'd like people, maybe a question to think about, and then something they could do to move forward from that point? So what's the big question to think about that will make them go, yeah, I see I got a challenge here, and then what would you want them to do? I loved your last slide, by the way, the 3 ways to learn more. So what's the big question you want people to think about?
I think the biggest question I would encourage people to think about is your operating rhythm fast enough to serve or to help you execute in the market that we are operating, while maximizing your resources, talent, capital, and so on. Is your operating rhythm fast enough?
That's the perfect question. And then the next question is, and if it's not, what are you going to do about it? Right?
Exactly.
I love
it. If it is not, yeah.
Well, look, we are winding down. I want to thank you very much for what you presented. I described this. I don't know if you were on the call earlier, but I described each of the speakers today, yesterday, and tomorrow as an assistant, a tool purveyor, a savant, a Sherpa, some way to help people climb this mountain that they're trying to climb or go through this jungle. And I think what you're describing is an incredibly important point. Once you get to a certain point in a company and it's not just 5 people sitting around talking to each other, you got to start getting coordinated, and you got to get an operating rhythm that'll run, or you're just going to stall. And that's where a lot of companies are, right? They're at the stall point. And one of the reasons they're stalled is for what you said. So thank you for bringing your guidance, your wisdom, and your company's strength behind it to help people understand how you and your company could help them make sense of their operating rhythm, move it to a digital operating rhythm, and save lots of time. Or as I would say, help humans be heroes in the age of automation. Himanshu, thank you very much. Everybody else on the call.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you again. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody on the call, we'll be back in 15 minutes at the top of the hour with our next presentation, all about change, which leads directly into how could you make what you just saw work in your company. We'll see you in 15 minutes. Thank you, Himanshu. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.